All right, so on today's episode of What's in the Driveway, it's a little bit different than normal. I've always thought they were kind of cool, and these cars or trucks, I think they serve a lot of purpose. I don't think anybody uses them for what I assume their intended purpose was when they were thought up on the drawing board. But I've always thought they were pretty neat and kind of a good, in between. Well, let's just pull it in and then we can talk about it a little bit. El Camino. Pretty much I think they're kind of based off of a Caprice Classic up here until about this point right here. They probably share a door. I'm not certain about that, but then from here back, we go into a truck bed. This one's got a 305. They're kind of getting into it now, pop the hood. Working on cleaning the engine bay up a lot, new carburetor, stuff like that. It pops right off when you start it, so it seems like they're getting it pretty close. That's with the old Quadrajet, but what we're working on is this. And bad news, that one fell off. And this one is here, so let's jump in a car and drive to my buddy's house and see if we can find that piece on the way, because we need that flange to do this job. But we're going to tie it into the existing, it was 2 into 1 and then back out into 2. We got a couple of mufflers back there, but let's jump in the let's go jump in the Jeep and go find this flange before it gets run over or somebody picks it up. So no luck finding the flange on the road, so I'm just gonna run up to the auto part store and hopefully they have one that's the right size. There's some long tube headers for a Chevy small block. So I think it's fairly universal and it's not like it's an uncommon setup. I'm sure it's the same flange for every exhaust, but that one goes 3" down to 2.5, the neck down. So we'll see how common it is when we get to the auto part store. But worst case scenario, I guess I'll be fabricating one because I'd like to get this project done today and get some exhaust on this El Camino for my buddy so he can drive it around with exhaust and tighten down flanges this time. But yeah, let's go see what we can find. All right, good news. O'Reilly's came through and had one set, so let's go get started on this exhaust system, get this car up in the air on some jack stands, and start mocking some stuff up. As usual, little hiccups here and there, but it's kind of what happens when you work on projects. I'm not an exhaust shop, just a guy who can do exhaust, so I don't have all these parts on hand or like extra ones hanging around. So in a situation like this, if I couldn't have bought it locally and I want to get it done today, that means I'm whipping out the plasma cutter and drawing on some metal with the Sharpie and cutting my own out, and it would have been good enough. But you know, I'd rather do these flanges because they flare the tube, so it's kind of, it sets loose in the flange that bolts to the header flange, so it's a little bit of adjustability. So mine would have had to have been a welded up flange, you know, a 3-inch down to 2.5-inch adapter welded to you know, 1/4-inch steel plate, and I would cut it out. But we don't have to worry about that now because we got some flanges. So let's get to the house and get these put in. One other thing before we get to the house and get to work on this, if you're doing your own exhaust like this, I highly recommend you get on I think it's either Jegs or Summit. I bought it when I did my Jeep, but it's a 2.5-inch exhaust like universal kit. So it comes with like a bunch of different like U-bends, 45s, and a bunch of straights. And it was not that expensive. It was like 145, 150 bucks a couple years ago. But I will say the bends in that kit were a lot less restricting than the mandrel bends that you can buy locally. It just seems like looking at them, at the bends, you're going from 2.5 and it's choking down pretty hard. Because normally when you bend metal like that, if you can't stretch the outside without it kinking, like a heavier wall steel tube, when you're building up thin wall tube, you have to throw these little wrinkles in it, or you know, it's a mandrel bend. And the ones that I bought locally definitely seem to choke it down quite a bit more than the ones that I bought, the Speedway kit that I bought years ago. So if you have time to prepare for this, get that Speedway kit or something similar. But all right, that's it. Let's get to it. All right, we got the new flanges installed, and this, you can see what I'm talking about, that mandrel bend that's 2.5 inside. You can see 2.5 inside, 2.5 outside, but you can still see how bad it kind of chokes down there. If you can look in there, I don't know if you guys can tell, but, and then you really can't get the right, we're trying to tuck it up between this bracket and this transmission pan to keep it as tight off the ground as we can without touching the frame. Touching the frame will give you some bad vibrations and cabin noise, so we're avoiding that. And then what we're gonna end up doing is, I'm already cutting angles. We're just gonna cut a bunch of angles in a piece of straight pipe, snake it around, and then same thing over here, and that'll keep us at the 2.5-inch diameter, and we don't have to worry about this mandrel bending. A lot more welding, but that's the way I prefer to do it. So let's just keep cutting and get her mocked up. Bunch of 15-degree angles, 15 and 15 obviously make 30, and that's not very restrictive at all, especially compared to your other option of a mandrel bend. So, and 2.5 inches is more than enough for a 305 to breathe. So let's get some of these tacked up and start eyeballing it under the car. So on par with pretty much all work on old cars, the rear exhaust hanger obviously broke, so Grabbed an old tire out of the backyard, and now this is the new exhaust hanger. Now we just have to get it drilled and thrown in there real quick because we can't do anything else until we get this done. Bolt on the top, new on the bottom. Just remove that bolt on the top and put it in that hole in the bottom and rehang this thing. This is what we have for the driver's side. Out of the long tube header, in here around the transmission pan, which lays right there. Cuts across, then kicks back, avoids the passenger side long tube. It comes about right here, so we'll kick out, follow this around, and then snake into. Both of these go into some pre-existing, you know, the long pieces of pipe that go back to those. I think they're MagnaFlows in the back, and then it has the rear exhaust exit back here under the bumper behind the rear tires. So driver's side turned out pretty good. A lot of crazy little bends to keep it in all nice and tight without, you know, causing too much restriction in the travel flow. But I think this will be fine. Yeah, here she is sitting in the paint booth just drying. As soon as it's dry, we can throw it under the car and start working on the passenger side. Just gotta put this in because the passenger side one comes to like right here, so we gotta kick it out and follow it around. But I want to keep it as tight as possible without touching. So I want to put this one back in so we can see where it falls. Looking good though. Alright, there she is, all installed. Got the passenger side all welded in. Driver side across the transmission pan and down into the MagnaFlows. Turned out pretty good, sounds good. Tucked in there quite nice. Well, that wraps up this install.